Welcome back. In this video, we'll be talking about dictionaries. Dictionaries are mutable collections of key-value pairs where each key is unique. Let's go through each one of those terms and explain what they mean. Mutable means that once a dictionary is created, its elements can be changed, so modified. Remember that with tuples, they were immutable, so that this meant that once a tuple is created, the contents of the tuple could no longer be changed. In this case, dictionaries are more like lists. So once a dictionary is created, you can easily change or remove the contents of the dictionary. Key-value pairs are the elements in the collection. So instead of having one element, we have a pair of elements. Look at this example. We have Alice, which in this case is the key, and to a key there is a value that corresponds to the key. So in this case, Alice is the key, while 50,000 is the value. Bob is the key, 70,000 is the value. The third part of the definition is that each key is unique. That means that we cannot have two elements with the same key. If we change the value of a specific key, it will be overwritten, but a new key will not be added. Let's look at this example. Alice is the key, 50,000 is the value. In this case, 1 is the key and the string 1 is the value. So what I want you to notice here is that we have the curly brackets that denotes a dictionary in Python. We have the key, which is the first element, and we have the value, which is the second element. Please pay attention to the fact that you can have both strings or any other Python type as both the key and the value. And in this case, the key is a string and the value is an integer, but in the second example, the key is an integer and the value is a string. So if we just print this, we will get the first one that says original salaries, 50,000 and 70,000. Then let's go back to the original example of the employee salaries and to take a look at how those dictionaries can be altered. So let's look at an example where we add something to it. So in this case, we have the name of the dictionary, so it's called employee salaries, and then we use, just like the lists, we use curly brackets to get an index, but in this case this is not an index, this is the value. So as we can see, there is no Charlie in the dictionary. So if there's no Charlie in the dictionary, and here, and we give it a value, it will create that key. So Charlie will be added. And then it will print added Charlie salaries and print the dictionary. Let's run it. Let's run the write file. So in this case, original salaries will be Alice 50k, Bob 70k, and then we add Charlie salary, which will be 80,000. We can also try to add an existing value. So let's look at this. In this case, if we run the following piece of code, employee salaries of Alice will be 50,000. It will look for the key Alice, so in this case, this key, and give it the value 55,000. So instead of 50,000, it will be 55,000. Keep in mind the uniqueness factor, and if we use Alice, it will always change the existing Alice, and you cannot have two keys that are called Alice. So this is quite good in this case, because we don't want the same person to have two salaries. And this is a very good example of why you would need a dictionary. So if we run the code again, it will say original salaries, and then after updating Alice's salary, it will say 55,000 for Alice, and Bob will stay the original one, which is 70,000. Once again, if we want to showcase the uniqueness of the key, if we look at Bob and try to update Bob's salary, if we do employee salaries of Bob and then give it a new value called 75,000, it will say after giving Bob a raise, the updated salaries are the following, and then we can see that there is no new Bob added, but Bob has a new salary. In this example, we have a dictionary that maps some names to some emails. So in this case, as you can see, both the keys and the values are strings. The keys are the names of the people we want to save the email addresses for. So in this case, John Doe is the key and the value is john.doe@example.com. We can also have another one, Jane Smith, where the email is jane.smith@example.com. And then we can print this to see how it looks like. Let's run this. So in this case, we can see the dictionary syntax: john.doe@examples.com, jane.smith@example.com. Once again, in this case, to access something, we can use the same syntax as the list, but we use the value instead. So in this case, John Doe's email, and then John Doe's email will be printed because we write the name of the dictionary, then we write the name of the key. Be careful that in this case the key is a string. It must be a string in here as well. If this were to be a number, it wouldn't need the quotation marks anymore. We can also add again something just like the previous example. We can add Sam Adams to it to update the dictionary with their email. As you can see, it's added. We can also update the email of John Doe again. So in this case, if we use an existing key with a new value, the value will be changed. So as you can see, there is only one John Doe in here, and before updating it will say john.doe@example.com, and afterwards it will say a new.johndoe@example.com. Now let's get into something new, that's removing an element from the dictionary. There's two ways of doing this. One is using the del command, which in this case will just remove it. But one problem with del is that if we don't have this value, it will throw an error. We can also use the pop with none parameter, and this will gracefully allow us to run it even when this key is not in the dictionary. This might be useful when we're doing some automatic stuff and we might want to try stuff until all the elements are removed. So those two are equivalent. If we run this again, you will see that even if we don't run the second line, it will say after deletion Jane Smith will be removed. If we try to do it again but with pop, it will not throw an error, but if we remove the none here, as you can see, we'll get an error here. So be careful with it. So the none basically tells it not to complain if the list is empty in this situation. One last example of using dictionaries. In this case, we have a dictionary where we can store some user settings. In this case, the key is theme and the value is dark. The key is notifications, the value is enabled. The key is language and the value is English. And if we print this again by running the whole thing, as you can see in the last line here, it will print this. If we want, for example, to only access something from it, we can use the same syntax. So use the square brackets, and then let's say if we want to check the one user's language, we can type language here, also add a nice message, the user's language is, and then whatever, add a comma and run it. And as you can see, it will say the user's language is English. It will go in here, get the key language, then it will look back here and check what is the value for the key language. Well, that's been it about dictionaries. I hope I'll see you in the next video.